Most people believe persuasion is something obvious: a loud voice, a strong argument, a visible attempt to convince. But the truth is far more unsettling. The most powerful persuasion doesn't look like persuasion at all. It feels like your own idea, and that's where it becomes dangerous. Because if you can't see influence, you can't resist it. You might think your choices are entirely your own. But the reality is that subtle forces shape your decisions every single day. Once you begin to understand how this works, something shifts inside you. You start to notice patterns you never saw before, and suddenly, human behavior doesn't feel as simple as it once did. Think about the last decision you made, something small, like what you watched, what you agreed with, or even what you believed in a conversation. Now ask yourself honestly, was that completely your decision, or was it quietly guided by something external? This is where psychological persuasion begins to reveal itself. It doesn't force you. It doesn't pressure you in obvious ways. Instead, it works beneath your awareness, blending into your thoughts so seamlessly that you accept it without question. And the most important thing to understand is this: learning about persuasion is not about controlling others. It's about protecting your own mind from being controlled without your awareness. Persuasion is not about force, it's about alignment. The most effective influence happens when something aligns perfectly with your emotions, your beliefs, and your identity. People don't change their minds because of pure logic. They change because something feels right to them. And that feeling is not random. It is carefully shaped by psychological triggers that operate below conscious awareness. Human beings are emotional by nature. We like to believe we are rational, but most of our decisions are guided by feelings first and justified with logic later. That's why persuasion doesn't attack your mind directly. It works quietly through your emotions, guiding you without resistance. One of the strongest forces behind persuasion is familiarity. The more you see something, the more you begin to trust it. This is not because it becomes more true, but because your brain associates familiarity with safety. When an idea appears repeatedly, your resistance slowly fades. It starts to feel normal, and eventually it feels correct. This is why certain beliefs seem obvious after a while, even if you never deeply questioned them. Your brain is simply recognizing a pattern it has seen before, and it interprets that pattern as something reliable. Another powerful element is emotion. Logic can inform you, but emotion is what drives your decisions. When something triggers a strong feeling, whether it's fear, desire, guilt, or belonging, it bypasses your critical thinking. You don't stop to analyze it. You react to it. This is why emotional messages are so effective. They don't need to prove themselves logically. They just need to make you feel something intense enough that you accept the message without resistance. And once emotion takes control, your mind begins to justify the decision afterward, making it feel like it was logical all along. Social influence also plays a massive role. Humans are wired to look at others for guidance. When we see a group agreeing on something, we instinctively feel that it must be right. This is not always a conscious decision. It's a survival instinct rooted deep in our psychology. Being part of the group feels safe, while standing alone feels uncomfortable. So when persuasion is framed as something everyone agrees with, it becomes much harder to resist. You're no longer just evaluating an idea. You're subconsciously deciding whether you want to belong or be isolated. You can see these patterns clearly in everyday life. In a workplace, someone might not argue with you directly. Instead, they might say, "Most people think this is the best way." That single sentence shifts the dynamic completely. Now, disagreeing doesn't just mean challenging one person. It feels like you're going against the entire group. Your confidence weakens not because your idea is wrong, but because the social pressure makes it feel risky to stand alone. This is persuasion working through subtle psychological leverage. In relationships, persuasion often takes an emotional form. A simple statement like, "I feel like you don't care about me anymore," is not just sharing a feeling. It creates emotional pressure. It triggers guilt and shifts your focus away from logic and into emotional response. Instead of thinking clearly about the situation, you feel compelled to react in a way that relieves that discomfort. This is how easily emotions can guide behavior without you even realizing it. Even in something as simple as advertising, the same principles apply. You don't choose a product because you analyzed it deeply. You choose it because you've seen it repeatedly. It feels familiar. It feels safe. Over time, your brain accepts it before you even consciously decide. By the time you make the choice, it feels natural, as if it was always your preference when in reality, it was shaped over time through repeated exposure. The deeper reason all of this works lies in how the brain is designed. Your mind is constantly trying to conserve energy. If you analyzed every decision carefully, you would become overwhelmed. So instead, your brain uses shortcuts, mental patterns that help you make quick decisions. These shortcuts are useful, but they also make you predictable. You trust what feels familiar. You follow what others are doing, and you avoid emotional discomfort. Persuasion works by tapping into these patterns, guiding your decisions without you realizing it. There's also a deeper layer involving identity. People don't just defend their opinions. They defend who they believe they are. If an idea aligns with your identity, you accept it much more easily. If it threatens your identity, you resist it immediately. This is why the most effective persuasion doesn't feel like opposition. It feels like agreement. It feels like something that confirms who you already are. And because of that, you lower your guard without even noticing. So how do you protect yourself from all of this? The answer is not to become paranoid or distrust everything. The answer is awareness. The first step is to slow down your reactions. When something feels urgent or emotionally intense, pause for a moment. Ask yourself why it feels convincing. Is it based on clear reasoning, or is it triggering something emotional inside you? That small pause can create space between influence and decision. It's also important to separate feeling from fact. Just because something feels right doesn't mean it is right. Your emotions are signals, not instructions. They tell you something is happening, but they don't always tell you what is true. Learning to observe your emotions without immediately acting on them is one of the most powerful forms of mental control you can develop. Another key step is becoming comfortable with standing alone. Social pressure is one of the strongest forces of persuasion. But truth is not determined by how many people agree with it. If you rely on others to validate your thinking, you become easier to influence. Real strength comes from being able to think independently, even when it feels uncomfortable. You should also question repetition. When you hear something again and again, don't automatically accept it. Ask yourself whether you believe it because it is accurate, or simply because it has become familiar. This single question can break the illusion that repetition creates. The most important shift you can make is understanding that persuasion is not something that only affects other people. It affects everyone. No one is completely immune. The difference is awareness. People who are unaware are shaped by influence without realizing it. People who are aware begin to observe it. They start to see how conversations are framed, how emotions are triggered, and how decisions are guided subtly over time. Once you begin to see these patterns, something changes. You are no longer fully inside the influence, you are watching it happen. And that awareness gives you control. Not control over others, but control over yourself. You begin to choose your responses instead of reacting automatically. You begin to think more clearly, even in situations designed to influence you. The art of psychological persuasion is not dark because it exists. It is dark because most people never realize when it is happening. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. You start to recognize how deeply influence is woven into everyday life, from conversations to media to relationships. And that awareness gives you a quiet kind of power, the ability to stay grounded in your own thinking, Even when subtle pressure is all around you. If this made you reflect on your own thinking, take a moment to engage with it. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever realized that a decision you made wasn't entirely your own? Once you start noticing, you may find that those moments are more common than you ever imagined.